The White House threatens to sue CBS over interview editing, raising major First Amendment concerns. A pardoned January 6th agitator is chased through Minneapolis, reigniting questions about accountability. Right-wing media attacks, a woman killed by ICE while applying a double standard to identity. In Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton launches an AI attack ad despite his own corruption-plagued record. The actor Damon says Netflix wants movies dumbed down for phone viewers, believe it or not, and melatonin panic headlines and what sleep experts say really works. All that and more today on Filtered. Thanks for joining me.
Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker.
Hi, and welcome. Thanks for joining me. It is Sunday, January 18th. It's great to be back in the home studio again. Just got back from 3 days at the PodFest conference in Orlando, Florida, and getting to be face-to-face with many of the top podcasters in the world there. Fabulous experience, and I learned a lot there. Let's dive right in with our first story. The White House threatens CBS. According to the Times, the White House warned CBS News it would sue if a presidential interview was edited rather than aired in full. The threat followed a pattern of lawsuits and settlements aimed at media organizations. Legal scholars say this crosses a very dangerous line. This doesn't just cross a line, it basically scratches it out and obliterates it. The First Amendment protects editorial judgment, and government threats designed to influence how journalism is presented amounts to intimidation. This mirrors tactics used in authoritarian systems that pressure media without over censorship. Okay, so if this had happened 2 years ago, this would be the only thing anyone's talking about. This would have been a full-blown disaster. Even a year ago, it would have been front page news nonstop for days. As it is, this whole thing kind of gets downplayed because it's now seen as such an ordinary thing for this administration to be essentially spitting on the First Amendment, shredding our Constitution. So again, here's what happened. CBS interviewed their new anchor, Tony Dokapil, interviewed the president, 13-minute interview. And as he was leaving, the president said, "Don't you dare edit a single second out of it." And then the remark was, "We will sue your something for the posterior, shall we say. We're keeping this clean and family-friendly, brand safety on this program." But this is according to officials there. The reporter was told, "We will sue your blank off if you edit this interview at all." Now, let's not forget, Trump sued CBS in 2024. That was with previous ownership. Now his friends, the Ellisons, his buddies, own CBS. And they eventually, back then, before the Ellisons took over, CBS paid him $16 million. It was basically a shakedown. It was extortion. They didn't do anything illegal or certainly even unethical. They just didn't edit an interview the way Donald Trump liked. So this is following a pattern. The Pentagon is putting all sorts of restrictions on journalists. And again, this is not some sort of low-level, on-background junior press secretary telling CBS News this. This was according to Carolyn Leavitt, the official White House spokesperson. You know, the one who's so prim and proper and holy, and she has to have her big religious symbol on every day. Meanwhile, she's threatening with obscenities to sue a major news organization for not putting out unedited the interview with the president. So some of you may be thinking, well, you know, it's the president. Why don't they put it out unedited? You wouldn't have journalism if you couldn't edit it. If the only thing reporters could do is put the entire speech of a politician, then you really would have politicians just speaking 24 hours a day. If suddenly it became illegal. Now, that is what you have had in various totalitarian regimes, is you see nonstop, on loop, dear leader speaking It happens in various authoritarian regimes. It happens in 1984 in Orwell's look at how authoritarian regimes work. But it's not supposed to happen here in the United States. I mean, it's not how journalism works. Journalism is, yes, you may interview a president, a senator, a prime minister. You may interview other people. You interview people who think this person's doing a great job. You interview other people who poke holes in it. You cobble together a story. You interview citizens. You get different perspectives. That's what journalism is. And here we have officially from the White House saying, no, that's not what we want anymore. I mean, how far away are we from getting to the point where major news organizations are simply told, if you have a Democratic candidate for the Congress or president on your network, we will take away your license? I mean, you can kind of see how the strands are connecting in Dear Leader's thought process, which is any Democrat, no matter how centrist, even if they're right of center, if they criticize the Dear Leader, then they are ipso facto a terrorist or extremist or infiltrated by radical extremists from other countries. And they're therefore essentially terrorists. Therefore, they need to be shut down. Therefore, any media organization that quotes them accurately is aiding and abetting terrorism. Therefore, don't have any Democrats on your airwaves or we will take away your license. Now, it hasn't gotten that far yet, but even a month ago, if I suggested to you, Donald Trump is going to order CBS News to carry his entire interview unedited or he will sue them, you would have scoffed at that. You would have said, oh, TJ, you're hanging out with the MSNBC crowd too much. You're hanging out with the AOCs and the Bernie Sanders too much. That's crazy talk. Yes, Trump likes to kid the press every now, but he would never do that, and yet here he's done it. Now, this is on top of the Department of Justice raiding a Washington Post home, taking their cell phone, their computer earlier this week. Let me remind you where this sort of thing is common. Russia. That's what does this sort of thing. Russia uses lawsuits, regulatory harassment to go after a journalist, and they do that before outright banning them. Hungary. Hungary's a wonderful country. I've spent a lot of time there. It's beautiful people, great food. I love the pâtés, but it's no longer a democracy. And it was done not just by decree one day. It was done step by step, gradually. Viktor Orban scratching away the lines of democracy, shutting a little newspaper down here, putting pressure on a TV license there. And before you know it, no one's criticizing Viktor Orban in Hungary. Turkey, same thing happens. Turkey, one of the choice little tools they use is bankrupting journalists. Oh, hey, you can print anything you want. You can criticize our leader, but we're going to sue you, harass you until the point you're bankrupt. Then let's see how well you do on deadline. China, they really, really do enforce strict compliance, a lot of retaliation. They just simply refuse access. So you can sort of laugh at this and say, well, I don't like CBS News. They're too liberal. What happens if someone you don't like becomes president and they now tell Sean Hannity, hey, Sean, you got to run your script by me before you go on the air? Would you like that? Or how would you like some administration of another party saying, hey, you've got to fire Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity. You must now make AOC your primetime anchor for 2 hours. Would you like that? I don't think that you would. So here's the question of the day I have for you. If editing triggers lawsuits, is journalism still free in America? What do you think? I would absolutely love to hear from you. Post your comments on YouTube. Yeah, you may be watching me on a lot of other places, but one of the things I learned from attending PodFest this past 3 days is that in the world of media, advertising, sponsorship, nobody cares about most platforms. The big advertisers, they care about two things: your downloads on all sorts of audio podcasting platforms and the number of views you have on YouTube. So forgive me, I got to deal with the world I live in. So if you are watching on any other platform, I would beg you, urge you politely, come on over to my YouTube channel. It's TJ Walker Success on YouTube, and post your comments below on this video. It would be greatly appreciated. Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. I've trained presidents, prime ministers, and Fortune 500 CEOs. But the same exact communication I've delivered to world leaders is now available to you online, anytime at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Whether you're speaking on camera, pitching a client, or handling a crisis, you need these tools. These aren't fluffy motivational videos. They're practical, battle-tested techniques to help you speak clearly, competently, and persuasively. Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com and take your communication to the next level. January 6th, agitator is chased. This happened in a downtown protest in Minneapolis. It was organized by a conservative influencer, Jake Lang. He collapsed after counter-protesters overwhelmed him and his supporters. Lang, a pardoned January 6th rioter, was chased into a hotel before police intervened. Lang was previously convicted and imprisoned for participating in the Capitol attack, a violent effort to block the transfer of power. His release came through political pardon, not exoneration, prompting critics to question whether accountability has been abandoned. Now, let me be fair here. I'm here not as a political spokesperson for any party or any ideology. I'm here as a sane, sensible centrist. So I call it out like I see it. This guy, Jake Lang, is by all accounts a pretty despicable lowlife. There's no doubt about it. However, it does appear that a number of the protesters in Minneapolis went a little too far. Now, apparently he had a cut and was bleeding out of the back of his head. Whether it was some hard ice ball that hit him or anything else, I don't have the footage of that. But just because a violent thug, a criminal like a Jake Lang, an agitator, someone who rightfully should be in prison, is on the streets in your community saying nasty things, trying to rile people up, trying to cause insurrection, doesn't mean you should attack him or cause him physical harm. So I do want to call out the people, the activists who were, I can understand being upset and annoyed by this guy who apparently was there saying pro-ICE, essentially cheering on the execution of Renee Good. So clearly inflammatory, hateful things, but unlike a lot of so-called free speech advocates on the right, I actually believe in free speech. So he should be able to say all sorts of nasty things if he wants to. He shouldn't be attacked. Now, fortunately for him, he wasn't saying anything that seemed critical of dear leader. Therefore, he was not summarily executed like Renee Good was. So there is a big, big difference going on. Now, a lot of unrest going on in Minneapolis. Temperatures are near 10 degrees. Water balloons were flown at this guy. And as I mentioned, there was a minor head injury. I'm not excusing that. So yes, it's wrong to throw water balloons at someone. You know what else is wrong? Pointing a gun as they're politely, slowly at a mile an hour trying to drive away and shooting them 3 times and killing them. That's also wrong. I'll leave it up to you as to, which is the more grievous problem, which is the more of a heinous crime. A little more about this guy. His name is Jack Lang. He was federally prosecuted convicted by a jury of his peers and incarcerated for his role in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. May I remind you, a police officer who was wounded the day of January 6th died later that night, the next calendar day. But everyone likes to forget. The people who tell us all the time how much they think blue lives matter, they don't seem to think blue lives mattered on January 6th. Because there was a police official who was killed because of injuries the very next day, because of injuries sustained on January 6th. Plus, there was another protester killed that day. And Jack Lang was a part of that. He participated in a mob that assaulted law enforcement officers, breached federal grounds, and yet Trump gave him a full pardon, as he did all of these criminals. So what have we heard for decades from so-called law and order types, conservatives? These liberals are bad because they're too lenient to violent criminals. Many of you are too young to remember this, but I well remember one of the big themes from the 1988 presidential campaign is you should not elect Michael Dukakis because he let Willie Horton out of prison. Here was a guy, convicted murderer, and he was let out on a weekend release program, and he went out and raped and murdered a woman. And that helped George H.W. Bush a great deal in that 1988 election. Okay, I'm not relitigating the past, but what's sauce for the goose should be sauce for the gander. If you let violent criminals out and they go off to commit more atrocities, stir up trouble, agitate, do things that require more police officials, then that's on you. And Donald Trump, this one is on you. Because this is a little in fairness to Michael Dukakis. Michael Dukakis did not give a full pardon to Willie Horton. He didn't say, hey, Willie, I know you murdered and raped, but you know what? You're a supporter of mine, so we're just going to wipe the slate clean. That's not what Michael Dukakis did. That is essentially what Donald Trump did for this so-called agitator, this insurrectionist, Jack Lang. And it's downright disgraceful. And this is what happens when you let criminals come out and you pardon them and you tell them, hey, I know you committed a bunch of crimes. Your own government filed charges. You were convicted by a jury of your peers, but you know what? Forget about it. You made me look good. And crime is fine as long as you're committing crime for dear leader. That's essentially the message that these January 6th protesters, I call them protesters. They weren't protesters. They were January 6th criminal, insurrectionist, and traitors. That's really what they are. When you launch an attack on your own government, you're a traitor. You are an insurrectionist. Klaus writes, 1984 is closer than any of us would believe. Klaus, I think you're right. Thank you so much for watching today. I do appreciate it. Okay, question of the day. I want to hear from you. Should political pardons erase accountability for violent crimes? I don't think so, but I would love to hear from you. Are tensions going to cool down in Minneapolis, or are they just going to escalate? It seems as though there's a real political agenda coming out of Washington, which is if we can just create more and more agitation in democratically led cities and states, which they, of course, have to say Democrat states because somehow that's seen as a burn. I don't know why. But if they could just create more anger and foment controversy, foment attacks, anger, agitation, that can be an excuse to sort of bring in more military. And what do you know? Maybe we just cancel elections in those precincts or in those cities that happen to vote Democrat. That seems to be the perception. Blank State stops in and says, hello, thank you for stopping in. I do appreciate you. And if you are watching from Twitch, I do appreciate it, but please, 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 if you don't mind, just occasionally come on over to YouTube, subscribe here, watch here, leave comments here, or go to your favorite podcasting platform and subscribe to Filtered with TJ Walker. I would very much appreciate that. And if you could leave a review, sign up for notifications, and please tell your friends. There's lots more to come. Filtered is brought to you by the following. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Welcome back. Renee Good and media smears. Right-wing media figures vilified Renee Good, the woman killed by a federal immigration agent in Minneapolis, portraying her as violent and radical. Coverage, especially on Fox News Channel, repeatedly emphasized her sexual orientation. She is or was a lesbian, while minimizing scrutiny of the ICE agent who shot her. Media critics say this framing is intentional. Identity is used to other the victim, while the shooter is treated as a neutral arm of the state, shifting attention away from lethal force and toward culture war narratives. So the other thing going on here in this story is there's the rise of a new acronym known as AWFUL. You got to give it to these right-wingers. They're very clever, whether it's coming up with names like death tax and things to popularize their views. And the awful is just a way of making urban liberal women they don't like seem like non-humans. It's an acronym that stands for basically uptight urban liberal women who are democratic, and they don't like them. So they just keep using this label again and again and again. And that way you don't really have to look at the facts. And that makes it even easier to swallow what this ICE official who shot and ended her life did right afterward. It's been caught on tape. And he used hateful comments. He said the effing, not which, but something like which that begins with B. Those were his last words to her. Those were presumably the last words she ever heard, if she had not lost consciousness or lost life at that point. Him calling her a nasty slur. So here's the thing that other commentators have pointed out. I'm not the first, but and I don't know, but there's a 95% chance that the officer who shot and ended the life of Renee Good is a heterosexual. I don't know, because no one even bothered to report on it. For the sake of argument, let's say it is. Why isn't that being put into every single story? For some reason in conservative press, it seems to be just considered obvious that, if someone is involved in some sort of politics you don't like and something bad happens, well, they deserved it because, they're a part of those people. Maybe they're an illegal immigrant, in their words. Maybe they're a radical, a terrorist, an extremist, a lesbian. All of these things seem scary to certain audiences of certain news networks where the average age is old enough to call me Sonny Boy, and I'm no spring chicken. So it's kind of nasty the way this is happening. I don't think that Renee Good should be deified because she was a lesbian. I don't think she's extra meritorious because of her sexuality, but I certainly don't think that that's somehow is another thing in the favor of the ICE official who shot her, because somehow it's okay because she must, if you're a lesbian, you must be a radical extremist. And this is sort of an odd thing for the MAGA movement, because Donald Trump has broken with the religious right on this issue. I mean, his own Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, is married, has children, married to a man, has children. Okay. There are other ambassadors. One of Donald Trump's favorite ambassadors is an out homosexual. So it's not that Trump himself seems to be going around saying, wow, I don't want any gays in my administration. He's not saying that. But it seems like he and his team always want to be able to play that card. Oh, here's somebody we don't like. We got him. How can we rile it up with our base? Oh, we'll play this card. Card might not work on them, but they're more than happy to play that card as well. And it's just a bit sad. So again, I'm a sane, sensible centrist. I'm not going to allege that this ICE official, because he's heterosexual and maybe he was dumped, maybe he hates women, maybe women hate him. I'm more than happy not to make a case out of his heterosexuality. But I would ask that Fox conservatives and those who need, in a knee-jerk fashion, support ICE, not make Renee Good's sexuality an issue either. Why don't we just leave it off the table? So that's my question to you. Why is a victim's identity highlighted, specifically a sexual identity highlighted, but a shooter's identity, if it's part of the police, never is? Certainly, the relatively recent shooting of Charlie Kirk, a lot was made out of the fact that the alleged shooter was in a relationship with someone who was a furry and I guess transitioning. That was played up a lot when it was convenient to make that guy look bad. But it's not convenient to make the ICE official look bad, according to state-run press and the White House. And these days, I guess state-run press is pretty much anyone who has a license from this government.
We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach. And even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question. Get feedback on your elevator pitch. Rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it.
Hello and welcome. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filter. Thanks so much for joining me today. We have a lot more show to come. I'm glad you're here. It is a wonderful, cool Sunday here in South Florida. Just finished a couple of hours of pickleball. Had kind of a mixed record today. I was off all week traveling in Orlando with the Podfest convention, so did not get to play any pickleball all week. Normally that doesn't hurt my game much, but I have to admit I was off today, but I still had fun and still got a lot of great exercise playing with my wife and friends here in South Florida. So whatever sport you like, whether it's pickle, some people love pickleball, some people say, oh, that's for old pathetic people. Well, not really, but if that's your perception, that's okay. Doesn't matter if you like pickleball, tennis, bowling, if you call that a sport, sorry, bowlers, soccer. The main thing is move. Find something today, whether this is your off day or tomorrow's your off day or yes, find something that gets you moving and active, that you have fun. That's ultimately the best exercise, something you actually enjoy doing. Okay. Ken Paxton in the news, the Attorney General of Texas. He released an AI-generated digital ad depicting Senator John Cornyn dancing with a Democratic rival. Again, this is another Republican. It's Republican state. This is for the Republican nomination. And Paxton was implying corrupt bipartisanship. Now, the footage is fake and labeled as satire in teeny tiny little print, way, way down at the bottom. Critics say the ad exploits weak digital disclosure rules. Paxton's use of AI draws added scrutiny because of his impeachment, his fraud charges, his whistleblower settlements, raising concerns about how new technology can amplify political deception. Okay, this guy, he hopes to get that name. This Attorney General Paxton is really someone who I think is a fair representation of what happens if you take Donald Trump and pull him out of New York, scrape off the orange paint, scrape off the cotton candy hair, put it in a regular suit and put it in a state, but keep all the corruption, keep the brazenness, keep the willingness to have extramarital affairs, keep the inability to show any shame, boil it down, and create a knockoff, a state version. What do you get? You get this guy, Ken Paxton. So he's not unique because there is a Donald Trump already, but he is unique in the sense that you don't really see politicians at the state level able to get away with the same stuff that Donald Trump does. And yet Ken Paxton has done it. He was impeached in 2023 by the Republican, not the Democrats. Democrats have almost no power in Texas. He was impeached by the Republican-led Texas House on corruption charges. He faced felony securities fraud charges dating back years. He had to settle whistleblower claims involving alleged abuse of office. But he's a slippery one, he's a crafty one. He's wiggled and weaved his way through the legal system. And he's still there. He's still standing. He's still the Attorney General. And by all accounts, he may end up being the next senator from Texas. And he's willing to use these AI ads. Now, anyone who follows politics closely knows that Republican Senator John Cornyn is a conservative. He's just not someone who is, shall we say, extraordinarily enthusiastic about Donald Trump. He is, by all accounts, someone who votes for Trump about 99.9% of the time. But let's be fair. By most accounts, he's one of when you see reporters doing stories and they say, but according to one senator who did not wish to be named, he thinks Trump is a madman, Trump is crazy, what Trump is doing is unconstitutional. Most people would say, yeah, Cornyn's going to be one of those guys doing these quotes. He doesn't want his fingerprints on it, but he clearly, like the other senator from Texas, Ted Cruz, both of these guys clearly have absolute contempt for Donald Trump. They won't say it, but they do. Trust me on that one, okay? And that's opportunity for any ambitious Republican in any state. If you can position an incumbent as insufficiently enthusiastic about dear leader, that's a wedge into votes and possibly a disruption in a Republican primary. So Ken Paxton's trying to do that. So what he's doing is showing this very conservative, old-time Republican, John Cornyn, who votes for Trump pretty much all the time, dancing with a liberal Democratic black woman, and it is relevant in this context, Jasmine Crockett, as if they were just like best buddies. I'm frankly surprised Ken Paxton and his team didn't show the senator and the congresswoman naked in bed together. I mean, let's face it, you could, with AI, create that. He doesn't seem to be constrained by much else. Maybe that's coming up a week before the election. So I hope not. I really hope not. So the bigger issue here is, are we going to live in a world where absolutely anything goes with political ads? So you see your opponent's face morphing into Stalin or Lenin. Maybe people would find that cute because obviously they're dead. It's not real. Are we going to show footage of them in a dark room taking bribes and just making up allegations, but making the video look so good, so real, it does fool people? Do we need some regulation? I don't know. I mean, we do have a First Amendment, at least for some people in America, maybe not CBS News reporters or anchors, but there is tremendous freedom of communication and expression in America, as there should be. But in the past, if someone just told an absolute blatant lie, it was called out by the mainstream media. You couldn't simply say, my opponent was found guilty of 29 felonies on tax charges, tax violations, and 5 counts of pedophilia. You couldn't just put TV ads, mass mailings out there 3 weeks before the election and make it up and have it work, because you would have the front page of every newspaper in your jurisdiction. All the TV newscast would be doing stories on you about how you lied, and this was an egregious lie, and that would get out to voters, and it wouldn't work. But we no longer have newspapers in a huge percentage of U.S. congressional districts. So no one's holding these politicians accountable. And when it comes to big media, when it comes to Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and all the other big moguls, they don't want to have to get into the business of saying, okay, what this congressperson candidate said is kind of true, this one isn't. They're going to wash their hands of it. That's certainly what Mark Zuckerberg has done in recent years. So it's going to be more and more on you and on me. If I see things that are distortions and really despicably misleading, I'll try to call it out. I want you to as well. Now, in this case, they can always say, oh, we're just having fun. We're being funny here. Okay, maybe, but what is the line? Can you just show what looks like security footage of your opponent taking bags of cash from phony Arab sheikhs as bribery and present that as fact to the world? And if you end up winning, great. If you end up losing, you say, oh, well, I was just kidding. Because I don't know who's going to be the watchguard now. As fun as it is to bash mainstream media and attack them for bias, and yes, there is bias, what happens when you no longer have any media looking at it is you end up with a lot of George Santoses in the United States Congress. If you don't remember him, he was the guy elected 4 years ago from my old district where I lived in Long Island, who just made up everything. Made up everything about his background. Worked for Goldman Sachs, had college degrees, was on his college volleyball team as a star, was a successful investor. All of it completely made up. Nobody knew because there aren't really any newspapers in Long Island anymore. And New York City is so big, they can't cover a bunch of congressional districts. So it may be that Ken Paxton can essentially be the new George Santos. The problem is we could be seeing more and more and more George Santoses entering Congress every single day. Who knows? Maybe George Santos will run, not for Congress, but for Senate.
Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill and it's trainable. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching.
Matt Damon and Netflix in the news. According to Variety, Matt Damon says Netflix pressures filmmakers to restructure movies for distracted viewers, including front-loading action scenes and repeating plot points because audiences are often on their phone. Excuse me, TJ, I can't pay attention. Let me check Facebook and email. And what were you saying, TJ? It's kind of like that for the movies. Now, Damon made these comments while promoting his Netflix film, The Rip. Ben Affleck was in that as well. And he said, okay, maybe, but there are some exceptions. Netflix series Adolescence is proof audiences still respond to subtle storytelling. Full disclosure, I've not seen either of these yet. The debate highlights tension between artistic integrity and algorithmic-driven incentives that prioritize retention over depth. So these guys were on Joe Rogan. I mean, that's a pretty new media thing to do. That's a hot seat. If you are a Hollywood producer these days or a Hollywood media company like Netflix, yeah, you want to get your stars on Joe Rogan because he has a huge audience. And here we are talking about it right now. But is this thing I'm holding, and if you are listening on our podcast, I'm holding a cell phone, is this fundamentally changing every aspect of our reality and of our art? Because I do notice there's definitely a change in consumption. It annoys me, but I'm guilty of it too. If my wife and daughter have picked out a show and I'm not really that interested, I am as guilty as the next person of saying, hey, I'm so smart I can multitask. Let me check my most recent text. Let me check email. Has anybody called me? Is there any news I can do for Filter tomorrow? I'm guilty of it as well. But is this going to change the fundamental nature of how art is created? Because it does seem to be changing how it's consumed. Now, there's still good deals for traditional Hollywood directors, writers, producers with companies like Netflix and HBO. I mean, they do put out some excellent content. Martin Scorsese still gets to produce movies and direct movies for Netflix. And I loved the George Clooney that came out recently with Adam Sandler. It was a nice adult movie. It didn't seem like it was dumbed down. There weren't tons and tons of action scenes. But I think Matt Damon is being honest and accurate when he says there are a lot of suits in the room looking at data, because that's how Netflix got to be the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of valuation that they have. They look at data. They look at metrics. They are a data tech company, and they can see that the old way of doing things, of a big action scene in the first third of the movie, a bigger one in the second third, and your biggest action-packed one in the final third, isn't really working very well on Netflix. People are switching out. They're hitting pause. They're not going back to the movie. They're going to find a sitcom, or even worse from Netflix perspective, they're picking up their phone and looking at TikTok. So the suggestion, what Damon was talking about on Joe Rogan, is the need to have your biggest action scene basically right up front. Hook those viewers right at the beginning. And then periodically, you have to have these kind of sometimes awkward, stilted conversations between actors where you're telling people the third or fourth time of what happens. Well, Jane, since you are my daughter and we were estranged when your mother left me and when you were age 2, of course you realize, you hear things like that in movies more these days because they're so worried you've fallen asleep or been pulled away by the attention on your cell phone. And it can make it annoying and cloying Here's my bigger frustration. I can certainly understand Netflix doing their job, looking at the data. I want to beg you, though, put your phone down occasionally. The world will not end if you are not instantly accessing every single brilliant thing I say or anyone else says for a few minutes. If you miss a text, an email, you can come back to them an hour later when the show's over, when the movie's over. Later today, I'm going to be going to see the latest James Cameron movie, his latest blockbuster. And I got to tell you, I'm a little bit nervous. Not that I think it's going to be a horrible movie. I mean, the reviews are kind of mixed. I'm just nervous that I'm going to be around and it's going to be a big climax scene, and all of a sudden I'm going to see the big glaring blue of somebody who just couldn't resist pulling up their phone and going on Facebook. And I find it wildly distracting. Other people do too. They don't typically say things. I try not to say something, but I have to admit, sometimes I do. I just find it so outrageously rude and obnoxious to be pulling out a cell phone when others are trying to enjoy a movie. Even worse on Broadway show. It's one thing when you've paid a lot of money for a movie, but if you're in a Broadway show and you're with a couple of family members, an evening out can easily run you $1,000. And that's not even getting front row seats. It's not getting you Hamilton either. So you're there, you spent $1,000 and someone's pulling up a cell phone at a dramatic moment when everything else is supposed to be in the dark. It kind of ruins it for everyone else. So I am hoping, I wish I could somehow run a campaign urging people, put your phone down if you're watching entertainment. Put it in another room. Turn it off. Even better. If you want to look at your phone, schedule some time, do it. But this idea that you can't ever go more than 5 minutes, even if you're in the best movie era. Somebody spent 5 years writing, rewriting, producing this movie. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars to make this movie. And the idea that you can't just give them your attention for 90 minutes is, I would say, a little bit sad. So here's the question to you. Please post your comments right here. Are algorithms quietly reshaping how stories are told? And do you think that's good or bad? I mean, these days we do see more and more people watching with captions on. And I'm not talking about old people who can't hear well. And I'm not even talking about people who are listening in a second language. We're talking about native people watching a show in their native language, and they're seeing the full transcripts. That was not a thing until really a few years ago. Now you see it everywhere. There are debates, even in my household, whether that's the best way to do it. But that's another change that technology has created in the way we consume art and entertainment. What do you think? I would love to hear from you. In my household, I'm outvoted. I do not want to read if I'm watching a movie or a TV show. I want an entirely visual, emotional experience. If I want to read, I'll sit down, I'll read a novel. That's a logical, linear, rational reading experience. I don't like mixing the two. Others feel differently. Other members of my family, and I'm outvoted on this, feel differently. How do you feel? Do you use the technology of seeing the subtitles on when you watch movies or TV shows? Or do you like to get them off so you can just look at what the artist actually created? Weigh in. I would love to hear from you. Next up, we'll be talking about melatonin. Is it really good for you or not?
Want a shortcut to powerful communication skills? Download the TJ Walker Success Library. 5 of my best-selling books for only $9.95. Go to tjwalker.com/books. Instant access, big impact. I've had entire YouTube channels wiped out overnight. So if you enjoy this show, don't lose track of me. The safest way is my newsletter, substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Sign up for free and you'll get exclusive commentary, live session alerts, and first access to new tools. Again, that's substack.com. Just search for TJ Walker or go to substack.com/@TJ Walker Success. Your direct line to everything I do.
According to the Times, recent headlines warn melatonin use may be linked to higher heart failure risk. Based on an unpublished study, sleep experts caution the findings show correlation, not causation, and may reflect underlying sleep disorders. Specialists note melatonin often works no better than placebo for insomnia. They urge people to focus on consistent schedules, light exposure, behavioral routines, and cognitive behavioral therapy before turning to supplements. Okay, let's dig a little deeper here. So there was a study that came out. It was sort of a meta study, looked at a bunch of different studies on melatonin and showed a correlation between people who took melatonin and heart problems. I want to stress, there's no proof that there was causation. It could be that people who are ill, suffering ill health, about to have heart attacks anyway, are not sleeping as well. So they're taking melatonin, and melatonin is not hurting them at all. We don't really know. And full disclosure, I am not a medical doctor, and I'm certainly not your medical doctor. I provide no medical advice here. And I'm not advising for or against any particular supplements. But I do want to look a little deeper into this because I do think it's an important issue for how we as human beings receive information, good and bad. If you love melatonin and you take it every day and you think it's the reason you get a good night's sleep, you sort of automatically ignore things like this. That's human nature. You discount information you don't want to hear. People who love to drink wine only remember the old studies that says moderate alcohol use. People who do that live longer than people who are teetotalers. They tend to ignore all the more recent studies saying, no, that was just correlation. Actually, any alcohol use is bad for you. You're better off without any. It's easy to pick and choose based on what we as humans want because we're all looking for confirmation. That's confirmation bias. The reason I point out this with melatonin is I do think we live in an age where we're all looking for the quick fix. Oh, I can drink coffee all day, not exercise, watch TV, place internet bets, Kalshi and sports teams till 2 a.m., pop a melatonin and I'll be great and be the star at the office at 7 a.m. tomorrow. The human body doesn't really work that way. Again, I'm not your doctor, but I would urge you, before you take any supplement or any drug, to do the things that medical science does say there's consensus evidence on. There's just a tremendous amount of evidence showing that if you want to get better sleep, exercise daily. Do some aerobic exercise. Get out in the sun in the morning. Walk. Eat real food, meaning mostly food that's unprocessed. Fresh fruit and vegetables. Meat that's not fried and slathered with sugary sauces. Trying to avoid as much sugar, heavily processed carbohydrates as possible. Eating real food. Exercising, and ideally exercising earlier in the day. I love to exercise in the morning. Some people can exercise early evening or even late evening and still sleep well. Sadly, that does affect me negatively. And of course, probably the number one thing most people could do that they're unwilling to do is if you want to sleep better, maybe, just maybe, don't grab the melatonin first thing. Maybe the first thing to grab is this. I'm holding my cell phone now. If you want a better night's sleep, the magic is right here. And I don't mean another sleeping app or a meditation app, and there are many good ones. I don't mean taking a sleeping course, which I do have, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is grab your cell phone, literally turn it off, an hour, preferably 2 hours before you need to fall asleep so that you can get at least eight and a half hours sleep before you have to wake up. That's really the number one thing you could do if you want to have a good night's sleep, rather than just ignoring all that, having a few cocktails at 11 o'clock, eating a big meal late, watching TV, getting in angry conversations and debates on post on social media till 1 o'clock, and then trying to fall asleep. Turn off the phone. Other just basic things. Keep your room cool. I mean, I personally, you'd laugh at me if you saw me sleep because I have earplugs to block out any sounds. I have a sleep mask on. I have a white noise machine on. I sleep with a mouth guard to prevent me from snoring, a snore guard. I have a bed that I use 8 Sleep. And no, I'm not, they're not a sponsor of the show, but I've been using that for a little more than a month. And it changes the temperature throughout the night to keep me at optimum temperature. So I do anything and everything I can. I will confess that several years ago, I did try melatonin and it just made me feel weird. And then I went to ChatGPT and I asked it, what are the side effects of melatonin? And is it a good idea to use for sleep? And wow. Again, I'm not your doctor, but I urge you to do that with any supplement or drug that you take. You'll often be scared to death to ever take that again because as humans, we want to focus on the quick, easy fix. We want to, yes, let me take that GLP-1. Let me take that drug so I can still eat whatever I want and lose 50 pounds. That's another one I would urge you. Go to your favorite chatbot, go to your favorite AI and say, be fair, tell me the positives and the negatives of these new weight loss drugs. And if that doesn't scare you into eating healthy, I don't know what will. So I did some research on melatonin. For me, the negatives far, far outweigh the positives. Again, I'm not your doctor. The other consensus among a lot of the medical establishment is, even if melatonin can help you, most people are taking it at way too high a dosage. So I would urge you, if you are going to take something like this, in the United States, it's available over the counter. In Europe, it is not. If you are going to take it, talk to a doctor or at least try to find some expert information on what the appropriate dosage is, because it's often sold at a much higher dosage than is really considered healthy. Additionally, it is also something that some doctors say, okay, you're on a long distance flight, you're switching 10 time zones, maybe you use it once on a couple of transition days, but using it regularly, really a good idea. So please, whatever you put in your mouth, use some thought, use some scrutiny. So many of us have this attitude, oh my gosh, that's tap water. I would never drink that. And then we're putting Coke and Pepsi and things with tons and tons of chemicals and sugar that are proven to be horribly dangerous to our body, that cause obesity, diabetes, lead to things like stroke, heart attack, amputation of limbs when the diabetes sets in. But hey, it's in a nice bottle. Yeah, I can have another Coke. Yeah, I can have another Budweiser. And something comes in a nice, pretty package, a bottle with nice labels on it, and someone wearing a white coat at the store it was selling it. Well, it must be good, so let me take all these supplements. Well, be very careful. I'm not besmirching any one brand of melatonin, but I can tell you that in the United States, it's highly unregulated, anything in the supplements. I could go out to my street right now, scrape off dog poop, dry it, put it in a bottle, and tell you, hey, the mainstream medical establishment doesn't want you to have TJ's Magic Sleep Potion weight loss pill, but you can get it today for $9.95. It's unlikely anything bad would happen to me. and you would be eating the dog poop. Now, I don't sell that, but that's just an example of basically how unregulated so many supplements are in the United States. And maybe sometimes can help, but what if it's not what you're actually putting in your body? What if it can help sometimes and you're getting the real thing, but your dosage is so wrong, it ends up causing a lot more health problems than it solves? That is the problem with many of these pills, potions, solutions. My recommendation, again, is do the basic things based on personal habits where there really is no controversy. There's really no controversy. People can debate about Atkins diet versus this diet versus that diet. No one's really debating that going from a standard American diet of lots of 2,000 calories more than you need a day with lots of artificially processed sugars and processed carbohydrates and switching to fresh fruit and vegetables and relatively unprocessed food is better for you. It's the exact same thing with sleep. Turn off your phone, go to bed earlier, read a paper book, get some exercise, get out and have some sunshine, go for a walk in the morning. Do those things, and then it won't really matter if melatonin causes heart problems for others or not. You will be in good shape. I want you to be healthy. Part of the premise of this show is I want you to learn more about the world so you're informed, but I want you to know more so you can improve yourself. So that's why I try to look at all the top stories of the day through the lens of personal development, communication skills, and improvement, because we can learn about what's happening when we see other people confused by melatonin studies. What does it really mean? How do we interpret it? We can use information like that to get healthier ourselves. Thanks for spending time with me today. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filtered. This is the show where every day we look at the top business stories, culture stories, technology stories, and filter it through the lens of communication and personal development skills. That's what's different about it. My promise to you is you spend time with me each day, and you won't just be bummed out about the news, but you'll be more informed and you'll have more skills and more ability to navigate your way through your own life to be successful. Thanks so much for joining me. Please don't forget, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel. I'm on all social media platforms, but it is more helpful for advertising, business reasons, for you to watch and subscribe on YouTube. So if you're watching video, please watch on YouTube. If you're listening on any other podcast platform, thank you. Please make sure you're following and subscribing there, and please leave a review. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.